The reality is, there are shows that are packed with valuable information that still lose listeners halfway through an episode, while other podcasts somehow keep people locked in from beginning to end. The question you need to be asking as a podcast host is, what's the difference? Today's episode is going to feel a little different than usual, and that is intentional because my guest today, Jimi Gibson, is a professional magician, a TEDx speaker, and an expert on the psychology of attention and communication. And he is going to walk you through a live experiment that has never been done here before on the show that demonstrates the psychology behind listener attention in real time. Welcome to Insider Secrets to a Top 100 podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Elmer. Let's make your podcast binge-worthy. Jimi, welcome to the show. I'm delighted that you're here.
Courtney, I'm excited to have this conversation. You've got so much energy and insight, and excited just to hang out with you.
I am too, because you're someone who's known for using psychological triggers to connect with your audience, to hold their attention. And we're going to unpack all of that. But before we do, I really want to dig into this pervasively unhelpful belief that seems to have infiltrated the podcasting space, that quote unquote good content is all it takes to grow a show. I'm curious, from where you sit, what do you see most podcasters misunderstanding when it comes to how they communicate with their audience?
Yeah, sitting on the other side of many podcasts, I see podcasters miss the point that it's a conversation and it's not to a group of listeners. Those listeners have some similarities, and you can talk about your ideal listener profile, whatever the case may be, but it's a very personal thing to be in somebody's ears for an amount of time, whether you have a 20, 30, 40 hour long show. And those people want to feel like you're speaking directly to them. They have to, in their brains, go, how does Courtney know that's exactly what I was thinking? And that is a bond that is created and also helps that listener come back because you're their friend and they want to hang out with their friend, even though they've probably never met you. And that is a difference between podcasts that are successful and ones that maybe are a flash in the pan and come and go because that connection doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, because you can hear the word connection thrown about all day long. We talk about it a lot. We talk about it in the content space, the creator space, the podcasting space. So much of the world and so much of marketing is driven on content. And yet, I feel like beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And there are many different interpretations of what makes good content. Because if you did have good content, and if that were all it took to grow a podcast, well, you'd have millions of listeners by now, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. So clearly, there's something happening here where good content, first of all, is not all it takes. And or maybe there's something missing in terms of the definition of good content. Maybe we haven't quite landed on what are the universal principles that make up good content. So I'd love to know, what would your definition of good content be then, in light of this context? What has to be in place to be able to form that bond with our listeners in a very natural way?
Sure. And I would say I'm going to take it a little bit different direction and not answer the question directly, but just kind of ask you a few questions myself. And so, Courtney, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. It's beautiful down here. The weather is lovely. I don't think we talked about where you're sitting today.
We haven't, but I am also in the South, New Orleans,
Oh,
Louisiana.
New Orleans. We get compared to New Orleans a lot. So Charleston and New Orleans. And so are you in the outskirts? Are you downtown? Are you in your office now? Where are you?
I am in my office now, which is about 10 minutes outside of downtown New Orleans.
Nice. I'm actually about 10 minutes outside of downtown Charleston. So I've timed it that I can leave my driveway and be sitting in a wonderful restaurant with low country cooking in about 12 minutes. So interestingly enough, I'm going to ask you to go to the front door area of your office, and there's a package sitting there. And it's a rather large, not huge box, but you lean over and sort of pick that box up and bring it back in. You can bring it into the conference room. You can put it on your desk. Have you got a picture of this box and then moving that into a room in your office?
I do.
Okay. Where is that box? Is it on your desk? Did you go to the conference room? Were you in the break room? Where did you think would be the right place to stop?
So I put it right next to me on the floor, next to my office chair.
Okay. I'm going to actually have you pick up that box and put it on your desk so you can get to it. And you might need a pair of scissors or something because it's got some tape on there. And as you look at it, you're like, this box has kind of been around. I'm not sure where this came from. So I want you to open that box now. And for the listeners, maybe you could picture in your mind's eye a box of similar description, and we'll sort of take this little adventure together. And as you open the box, you look inside, and there's 4 packets of envelopes, and they're all tied individually with some ribbon. So there's multiple envelopes in each of those packets. There's 4 packets, and I'll just ask you to pick up one of those packets of envelopes out of that box. And as you look at the address on the envelope that is on top underneath that ribbon, you see that it's actually addressed to a family member that you haven't thought about in a long time. And that relative is somebody that, you've had some experience, you have fond memories of that person. But then you sort of glance up at the return address on those envelopes, and they all are from a secret club or an organization. And you're thinking, ooh, this is crazy. I didn't even know they were in this secret club. So I'm going to ask you to put those down. That's a little bit intriguing. You pick up another packet of envelopes, again, tied with a ribbon, and they're addressed to the same person. But it's quite obvious that these are love letters. They're different shapes, they are bright colors. You can tell that they've been around a while, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't think I should look at these. This is kind of personal. And so you put those down. Now you've reached in and you grab the third packet, and then you look at the return address. And this one makes you jump a little bit because they're from a private investigator. And it's actually kind of a cheesy logo on there. They have a little shovel or spade in the return address, and it says, "We dig up dirt on anyone." And you're thinking, uh-oh, like, did this person hire the private investigator? What are they investigating? This is crazy. And so you put those down, and now you're to the last packet of letters, and you can just put the box off to the side, and you've got these letters in front of you. And as you look at the return address on this pack of letters, oh, this really makes you excited because they're from a South African diamond mine. And you're like, oh, this is my big day. Am I cashing in? What in the world could be in these envelopes? And so as you look back over the envelopes, you've got the ones from the secret club, you've got the love letters, you've got the private investigator, you've got the one from the diamond mine. I'm going to give you the chance to open one of these letters. And so which packet do you decide you want to pull from?
Well, love letter is the first one that popped into my mind, but I'm really curious about the PI letters.
Okay. So hang on to those PI letters. I want you to undo the ribbon. It's not really tied in a knot. There's a nice little bow, so you can untie those. And you put that ribbon down, and then you spread those envelopes out, and then I'm going to let you pick one. But when you turn over the envelopes, you realize that they're numbered on the back. Somebody has taken a pencil and written on the back, and there's 13 envelopes. And so you have these PI letters. There's 1 through 13. Which one are you going to open today, Courtney?
Number 7.
Well, what if I told you this adventure was really about selecting a card? I've got a deck of cards behind me on this table. And I'm going to hold this in view. For those of you who are watching, you can see it. For those of you who are listening. And so as I went through these various clubs or organizations, clubs, love letters, hearts, private investigator, and I actually said, we dig up dirt on anyone. And I said that there was a little shovel or spade. And then I said a South African diamond mine. Okay, those are the 4 suits, right? And then I said, turn over those envelopes, and they're all numbered with a little pencil mark, 1 through 13. Well, if you take aces low and king high, there's 13 cards. I just ask you, which one would you like? And you said number 7. So, in effect, you've chosen the 7 of spades, right?
Yes.
Well, you didn't even know I was guiding you in that. But what if I took these cards out of the box, and if I start to spread through Let me make sure here. If I start to spread through these cards, oh, something very strange is going on because one of these cards has been reversed in the pack. And if I were to pull that one out and turn it over and it was the 7 of spades, that would be pretty crazy.
That is crazy. And my 8-year-old needs to be here for this right now. He loves magic. This is awesome.
And so when you said what makes good content and what makes bad content, I have to go back to the structure of a magic trick and how what's going on. There is some psychology and some brain science behind content because we've probably all read a book and it had words and characters and it was somewhat entertaining, but in the end it was sort of blah. We've all been to movies and there were special effects and there were good actors, but then at the end you're just like, okay, it just kind of didn't do anything for me. And so what's going on? What's the difference between something that means something to you, connects with you? We use that at the beginning of the conversation. And then something that sort of amps it up, or something that fails to meet the expectations. And so when you asked me about content and I said I'm not going to answer the question directly, what did I end up doing? Do you remember what happened right after that?
The next thing after that, you asked me where I was based.
So we had a little conversation. We talked about the fact that you're in New Orleans, as they say, and I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. There's some compatibility between the vibe of those two cities. And so what's going on there? We're having a connection. And so there's some similarities with the fact that we're sharing this conversation, and that's a release of oxytocin. And that is the neurochemistry that releases that into the bloodstream, which basically says, hey, this is going pretty well. I like where this conversation is going. I'm not getting any spooky, weird vibes. Yeah, let's just keep talking. And that is a point where you can do that with your audience, even if you don't have an interview, if it's just a solo podcast, right? You have to be able to get in their head and greet them in a way that they feel like, oh, wow, Courtney knows me or Jimmy knows me and they understand where I am and this type of thing. And that really opens up the door to take it to the next phase. And the next phase is, I think, where most podcasters miss the opportunity to elicit curiosity. And so I just started telling you that there's a box on the front porch of your office and to bring that box. And then I talked about these letters. Talk me through what's going through your head at that point. Like, are you interested? Are you like, who is this crazy person? Could you visualize what I'm asking you to do? Just give me some feedback.
Yeah, I could easily visualize exactly what you were asking me to do. What I noticed about myself in that moment was everything else faded away, other than the mess on my desk, because I was like, I got to clear this off to put this box down. But aside from that, the questions that I had that I'm like, oh, I got to ask Jimmy this. I want to know about this. Like, I wasn't thinking about any of that. I wasn't thinking about what comes next in the conversation or where we're going to go from here. I was very present in that moment because you had my full attention.
Yeah. And so there's a couple of things going on. I put us in a space. I talked about your office. I said that there was something on the front porch. I asked you where you were in your office. You're sitting there, but the audience is listening and they're able to visualize. And so the theater of the mind is a very uh, fascinating place to be. Um, if you're just listening and not watching and you don't see Courtney's background, you may have a picture of what her office looks like. But if I don't ground that in space, you're just going to kind of float around in thin air, right? I was very purposeful about you might need some scissors. There's some tape on the box. We're going to open it up. There's 4 packets of letters. There's a ribbon. So I'm giving contextual details and I'm allowing that mystery to unfold. Now, at some point as we're going through this, you said that you were with me and you were looking at each packet and so forth. At any point, did you go, okay, how long is this going to take? Or were you engaged in the process?
I was engaged in the process. My only thought was, well, I want to make sure we can finish all of this in this episode so that then we can unpack in the bonus episode now how do we actually apply this? Because I knew you were taking us somewhere. And that was the only thought that crossed my mind. Otherwise, very, very present.
Yeah. And so what's happening there is, number one, you have to know your crowd. You have to know that there's a time limit associated with this. I can't do 12 packets of envelopes. I need to do the 4 suits because it's a card trick, right? And so I have to get through this in a way that balances all of those things. What's going on here? What's going on is curiosity. It's basically an open loop of we're going down this path, but I'm not sure where it's going. And so that's actually a release of dopamine. And a lot of people think about dopamine with social media addiction. It's not the addiction to social media, it's the expectation of closure or an expectation of a reward. And so as we go through this process, your brain is searching, going, I don't know where this is going, but I'm here. At some point, if you keep that open loop going too long, you're going to get exhausted and go, oh my gosh, just it needs to be over. And so at some point, I said, this is actually about you and a card trick. And then I started to repeat the various, club, organization, love letters. And now we move into the need for closure, which is the climax of the trick. And I stretched that out a little bit, right? I was like, well, I'm going to take these cards out of the box. I'm going to spread them out. Oh, well, let me spread them out again. There's one that's reversed. I'm going to turn that over. And so I don't just do it right away. I sort of build that tension. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. And then when I flip it over, that's the release of serotonin, which is the feel good chemical. Everything is right with the world. I have closure. Everything feels right. And so that's a natural structure of brain chemistry that you can use not only in the opening, but it could be used across the entire podcast episode, or it can be used for each individual segment. And so you're connecting, you're creating curiosity, you're closing, all of these types of things can work together. And so when you make it personal, when you have some intrigue, when you activate the theater of the mind, when you put things in an environment, and when it's very personal, then you can structure it in a way that is very meaningful.
From what I'm gathering and from what I'm hearing through this exercise and through what you've just walked all of us through here, is that these three neurochemicals need to be present in good content in order to keep the brain engaged. And I would imagine even more so now in the world that we live in, where there are so many demands on our attention and where our attention spans are growing shorter and shorter. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you miss one or more of these, then it's not going to feel complete. And I would say the one that is often skipped is the curiosity component, because people they believe they're making that connection and then they want to go straight to the call to action or the close, and it just doesn't feel right. Sometimes it can feel kind of icky or salesy. And so really what you want is for the natural progression to happen, and then the climax or the conversion just feels like the next part of the sequence instead of separated from the rest of the conversation.
Yes, or instead of feeling tacked on, or now all of a sudden I have to go into my sales voice to give you my call to action of the thing I want you to do, and then it feels weird. So I am very, very excited to unpack this with you in the next episode and actually break this down, because something you did mention, Jimmy, when you were going through your explanation of the trick that you did here live in real time, which guys, I had no idea this was coming. Like, I didn't know what Jimmy was going to do. I didn't know it was a card trick. I didn't know it. None of this was staged. Okay. And if you're watching this, then you saw the reaction on my face being like, wow, that was really, really cool. But something you mentioned is contextual details. And something, Jimmy, I'm always talking about. And if you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know specificity and how important that is. So, hopefully, we have piqued your curiosity enough to join us in the next episode where we'll get really practical and unpack all the principles here at work and how you can apply this to your episodes. This is the kind of stuff that gets me so excited to talk about. Jimmy, thank you for being here today and for just, all the feel good chemicals that we've got flowing around in our brains now, thanks to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun. Can't wait for the breakdown of the next episode.
And if you've taken a peek at your analytics dashboard lately and looked at your listener retention and noticed that your listeners are dropping off anywhere from halfway to 2/3 into your episodes, you're not alone. In fact, you're one of the 95% of podcasters who experience this, and it's fixable when you know what to look for. So in the next episode, Jimmy is going to join us back and hand you the 3-part framework that you can put into practice right away inside of your episodes to keep listeners mentally engaged throughout your content. Plus, he'll give you the 3 ingredients that have to be present in your opening hook if you want listeners to feel like you're talking directly to them. And by the time you finish listening, you're going to know exactly where most podcasts lose listener attention and what you can do to fix it. That's all coming up next to help you make your podcast binge-worthy.